lot of people have been talking noise about the Big Red. When Raiola slings it, you get on your feet, and I want 4 quarters of smash mouth football!
Welcome, Husker fans. Thank you for tuning in to Big Red Radio, the Husker Talk Show. I am your host, as always, and next to me is my co-host, Zach. How are you doing today?
Pretty good. I know last time we talked was obviously pre-Colorado game. Obviously was there, was able to storm the field. I now know why that's the first time in the 21st century that the Lincoln Memorial Stadium has been stormed. It was an absolute mess. As soon as you tried to jump their little 7.5-foot railing, you were immediately grabbed, escorted out of the stadium. So that was no fun. And so everyone was forced to go down single file, down the staircase, through a small gate. By the time I had got on the field, all the players were gone. Most of the little festivities were done. It was still cool to get on the field, but yeah, I think I looked it up. Last time the field was stormed was it was in the 90s. It was like 93 or 94. And so, yeah, I mean, it's pretty insane. It's obviously a once in a lifetime game, a once in a lifetime experience. The atmosphere was insane. You could feel there was a point where it was like, okay, this is really loud. And then there was a point where it got so loud that it actually almost seemed quiet, because I think like your ears shut off or some sort of decibel or something. But it was actually insane. It's definitely the loudest I've ever heard a college football stadium. To be fair, the only other college football games I've been to outside of Nebraska are mostly KU games. We all know how disappointing those fan experiences are. And then the Iowa Penn State game in 21 when it was 3 versus 4, and that didn't even compare to as loud as this was.
Yeah. No, we'll recap the Colorado game a little bit and then get into the UNI game as well. I think it'll be pretty short. UNI, obviously we know how talented they are. Actually, I mean, I say that. I mean, the lack of talent on their team. Nebraska's over a 4-touchdown favorite. But we'll get into it. But yeah, I want to get into Colorado first. So we each have our takeaways. I have 3 takeaways. I'm sure Zach has 3 as well. We might have some of the same, but my first one is I think Nebraska's run game has the potential to be one of the best in the Big Ten. It was absolutely dominant against Colorado. And say what you want about Colorado, they're not a good defense, not a good D-line, not a good linebacking core. So obviously the run game should go off, but it did. I mean, they were averaging, like before the second half where, stuff kind of happened with penalties and Colorado kind of knew that was happening and Nebraska just had control of the game. So it wasn't really, and there were some long runs that got called back and stuff too. But I swear Nebraska was averaging like 10 yards a carry. Every time Dante Dowdle got the ball, he was trucking over Shiloh Sanders in the first drive, and then just plowing forward. Even Ramir, when he got the ball, was making big plays. So it looked really good, and I think it could be up there with the best. It's going to be tough. You think of the teams. Ohio State's definitely going to have the best. They got 2 of the best running backs in the country. Michigan's run game, I don't think is going to be as productive as Nebraska's, just because their lack of a passing attack is going to really hurt them in that sense. You think about teams like Oregon. Oregon's going to have a good passing attack, yes, but their running attack is going to take a little step back just because they don't have the talent there that they did last year, and also they just want to pass it so much. And they're in these close games too, so it's kind of weird. But yeah, I think Nebraska can definitely be at least top 5. I would say it's going to be top 3 by the end of the year, just because Nebraska wants to establish that run so much, and they have the backs to do it. So that was my first takeaway.
Yeah. Off of that, you say Ohio State's got the best run game in the Big Ten. I might give it to Penn State, honestly.
I forgot about them. Yeah.
Yeah. So Penn State has what Nebraska has, like a four-headed monster, just literally on steroids. Nothing against our running backs. I just don't think they're at the level.
It's not there, right?
Right. They're not at that level yet. Penn State can literally put anyone out there, and that guy has the ability to be one of the best backs in the nation. And so, and they have like three or four of those.
Right.
But one of my, and honestly, my biggest takeaway is that we haven't turned the ball over, right?
Yeah.
Or I guess we turned it over and UTEP on the fumble.
Yeah, the fumble, Dowdle's fumble. Yeah.
But outside of a fluky, helmet hits right on the ball, we ran low, he tackled right on, fumble. Like there hasn't been like a pick. There was what probably should have been a pick.
Yeah.
Ended up being Ramir Johnson touchdown, but hasn't been a pick yet. Hasn't been, a drop snap fumble. Hasn't been a whole lot of like shooting ourselves in the foot, except for the late in the second half, mostly just fourth quarter of this Colorado game, which a lot of those flags I honestly do not agree with. Seeing them live, watching them back, I do not agree with them. And so a lot less shooting ourselves in the foot, which will allow you, paired with a really good defense and with this run game that we have, to be close in games with like USC, Ohio State, Iowa, right? Teams like that are gonna always, come down to the wire. And so the reason obviously we've lost so many over the last few years because we turn over the ball, we shoot ourselves in the foot, and our run game hasn't been able to establish itself. But we have all those three things, and so that's really how you win close games.
So my second takeaway was the defense is better than I think any of us thought it would be, which is crazy to say because we all had super high hopes for the defense. We all got laughed at least we did. We got laughed at for saying how good this Nebraska defense was. They're like, oh, you just played bad Big Ten offenses. Like your defense is going to look good. We just played, I don't want to say one of the best offenses in the country because they're not, but they have some of the most dangerous pieces on that offense.
It's probably one of the most explosive offenses.
One of the most explosive and one of the most potent offenses, just in the fact that they can score in one play. And Nebraska held them to 10 points. I don't know off the top of my head how many times they got held to 10 points last year. I know Oregon held them to 6, I think was their final score in that game. But Nebraska's defense is dominant. And people are seeing it now. Nebraska Colorado was the second most watched game of the day, behind Texas Michigan, which I think is even more impressive just because Nebraska Colorado was competing with Tennessee NC State other night games as well. Texas Michigan had everybody's eyes in the early slate, but that's not what we're talking about. But people know that Nebraska's defense is legit now. When you compare the D-line, which is one of the best in the country, to the improved pass defense, one of the best corners in the conference in Tommy Hill, I think the sky is the limit. It could be a top 10 defense. I think right now we're easily in the top 10. I think I saw a stat yesterday that Nebraska, Ohio State, and I want to say Alabama are the only 3 teams in college football that are top 10 in scoring and scoring defense that have played 2 FBS teams. So Nebraska's playing legit. I'm not saying we played the best competition. We've definitely had the matchup in both of them, but it's very impressive to say the least. So that was my second takeaway is I knew our defense was going to be good, but I think we're all amazed at how good it has been playing.
Yeah, so mine is also on the defense. Now, we all knew how good the rush defense would be. We have a really strong, just together, smart linebacking core. They're not going to win you over with sheer speed or strength or anything, but they are some like one of the smartest, and then just like playing together and playing the right way bunch that I've seen. Obviously our D line is second to none that we've seen so far. If you look at the old Big Ten West, I mean our D line is crushing everyone. If you look at the Big Ten in general, we're definitely up there. but the secondary, right? And so our passing defense was actually pretty good. Tommy Hill is has obviously put in a ton of work, and he's way more legit than anyone gave him credit for going in.
People are talking about
I'm
him as a first round pick.
Yeah, and so every time when I think Travis Hunter, which this isn't mind blowing stats. Travis Hunter had 40 yards receiving on Tommy Hill, but Travis Hunter is I'll give the guy credit. He's possibly one of the best receivers in the entire country. Um, and definitely, one of the guys that he doesn't have to be open to catch the ball. And so to hold a guy like that to 40, and then also outside of that, get the pick six. Colorado's passing, they had 244 yards passing, which is, quite a bit. You also got to think they're throwing their way back into the game.
Right.
But honestly, most of the time they're looking like 350 to 400, right, on most teams because they don't run the ball. It took them till the fourth quarter to get back to 0 rushing yards. It was early fourth quarter. They finally got back to 0. And so they were in the negative in rushing yards all game. So to hold a team like that to under 250 in the passing, that's actually huge. And so obviously a little bit of that has to do with sacks, but a lot of those sacks don't come without really, really good coverage downfield.
Yeah. No, definitely. And my last takeaway, it's a negative one. It's not incredibly negative. It's nitpicking to say the least, but the offense needs to be better off script. And, Nebraska's had favorable matchups in the first 2 games where the O-line is just dominant against the D-line, the D-line dominant against the O-line. You're able to run whenever you want, 4 to 5 yards per carry, pass when needed, and really just dominate the line of scrimmage. But when things go off script, you saw it in the second half with, penalties, just bad plays. The offense kind of struggled at times to get going. I think a lot of that also is due to Nebraska kind of just had control of the game, so they weren't trying to push anything. They weren't trying to force anything. There were some long runs that got called back to questionable penalties. I think that officiating was questionable for both sides, really. I don't think it was just geared toward Nebraska either. There was a lot of big plays that got called back for Nebraska, which is why it seems like Nebraska got the raw end of the deal. But there was some bad calls against Colorado too. But I just think the offense needs to be better off script, and I think they will be. I think that's a thing that happens, as you go throughout the year, especially with a young quarterback like Dylan. You're going to get better as you go on. You're going to get more chemistry with the offensive line, more chemistry with the running backs, more chemistry with the receivers. It's going to happen. So that's something that I want to see get better, but I also expect to get better eventually.
Yeah. My final takeaway doesn't really have much to do with like the actual playing of it, more so the mental side. And so I feel like this team like expects to win, right? Which is huge. If you look back at like 2020, 2019, 21, it was always like, man, like I hope we win, or even like, what if we won, right? Like, what if we actually went out there and like won this game? Like that would be crazy. Matt Rule's first year, it was more of, hey, I think we might be able to win this. Like I think there's like a real shot to win this. You know what I mean? You look back at like the Michigan game. It was like, man, like I actually think there's a real shot to do it. Maryland, like the Iowa game, like, and there was, right? We should have won a lot of those games, maybe not the Michigan game, but like Iowa, Maryland, Michigan State, Rutgers, Minnesota, like all those games should have been won.
Right.
Colorado, even, I think. And now this year, it's like, no, like we are going to win. Like it's just what we're gonna do. You know what I mean? Like we come out here, we play football, we go home. It's literally something and after the week. It's either 3-0, 4-0, 5-0. Like we're just gonna win, right? This week, our main goal is, we're gonna win, but we know we're gonna do that. And so, and you can just feel that, not only in the players and the fans as well. Someone on Twitter was talking about Husker PTSD, which I can tell you is 100% real. There's
Yeah.
actually no reason we should be up 28-0 at half and the fans be talking about, man, like, we still got to come out here and play. Like, we can't let them like score and then, get like a 3-and-out and then score and then it's a ball game. Like no other team in the country is in the top 25 is up 28-0 and thinking like, yeah, we could still lose this though.
Right.
We were up 28-10 in the fourth quarter, like 10 minutes left. And I was like, yeah, but like, if you think about it, like no other team is thinking that. And so it's good to see that the players have completely wiped that from their mind. I don't know if all the fans have, but
Yeah.
it definitely takes a while. But yeah, I definitely think mentally this team is in a great spot right now.
Yeah. No, for sure. So now we're going to get to our keys of the game against UNI. Obviously, UNI is nowhere. I think UNI is probably the worst team we've played so far, and we've dominated the first 2 games. So expect what you want. They got some good players. UNI is a top 25 FCS team. I think they're ranked 21st or something like that. They're 2-0. They got some really big running backs. Both their running backs are over 220 pounds. Even their third string running back is over in 220. Their starting running back, I think his name's Ty Edwards. He is like 6'3", 240. So he's a big dude. But yeah, I mean, they just don't have a lot. But there's still some keys to the game that I think are important. And my first one is you have to come out hot. And I think there's a lot of things helping with this. It's going to be a night game. Matt Rule definitely is pushing that, after we watched that game, things didn't go as well as we thought. Like that game should have been like 42-3, but instead it's 28-10. So there's a lot of things to fix. I think Matt Rule is pushing that. It's tough to get motivated for a team like UNI, especially after playing such a big game against Colorado. But you see it all the time. After big wins, teams come out and lay an egg. You saw it last week with Notre Dame. Notre Dame, huge win against Texas A&M, come back home, lose to a Northern Illinois team. It's not the same Northern Illinois team, obviously, but a Northern Illinois team that lost by 20 plus to Nebraska last year when Nebraska only won 5 games. So it's like these things happen. I don't think it's going to happen. We'll save our score predictions for later, but I think Nebraska's going to win. I think they're going to win fine. But I think it's really important that Nebraska needs to come out hot and needs to be up 3 scores within the first quarter, I think. And if I see that, then the training wheels are off for me. It's all or nothing for the rest of the season. And I know I shouldn't be saying that against a team like UNI, but I just think if the mentality is there that they need to come out hot after last week, that's going to prove to me that this team is legit and like their mentality is legit as well.
Yeah, my first one is you got to make them throw the ball. And so, like Caleb said, UNI does actually have a pretty good rushing attack. Ty Edwards is currently averaging 10.5 yards a carry. So he's 6'4", 230 on ESPN is what he's listed at. But what a lot of people don't talk is that their running back, their number 2 running back, has 185 yards and he's averaging 6 yards a carry. And so, they kind of have a 2-headed monster back there at running back. Now their quarterback is about 50% completion with about 200 yards in 2 games. And so clearly we know that their running game is really good. Their passing game, obviously we expect them to have much lower yards than a lot of people, but the fact that they're at like 50% completion shows that they're very inefficient in the passing game as well. And so if you make them throw the ball against guys like, Tommy Hill, Marcus Buford, blanking on who else is. I know Gifford's back there as well.
Hartzog.
And then also, Hartzog back there. Then also making them drop back when you have what we now call, I guess, death row coming up against them, against their O-line. It's gonna be rough, right? It's gonna be a really rough game for them. But if you let them run power O 4 yards in a cloud of dust every single play, yeah, we'll still win, but it might actually end up being like 28-3, and then that just doesn't look good. It might be like 28-10 again. That doesn't look good. But if you come out and you stop the run, like Caleb said, come out hot and force them to throw, that's how I think you win games, 42, 50 something to 3, right? And so that's my first key to the game here.
Yeah. So my second one is get as many players in the game as possible. Matt Rule's trying to play his depth. He's trying to play these freshmen and sophomores up to that 4-game mark so they can get this experience. It's good for development. It's good for experience. It's less chance for your starters to get hurt when they play less. So also, I don't want to look ahead too much, but when these players play in this environment and show that they can play, they're less likely to leave in the off season, you know. So I think even if they do redshirt this year, they got a chance to show that they can play, and they got a chance to even show themselves like, I can actually be a player here. I don't have to leave to get that opportunity. So I think getting players in the game is important, and that kind of goes back to my first point. You know, get up on them as early as you can, so the second string can play the second half. You know, Dylan and Dante Dowdle and Ty Robinson and all the defender like Tommy Hill, they don't have to play in the second half. Get up 3 scores, 4 scores at the half, and then you can just let it ride the rest of the game. Get these guys experience. Get Heinrich in there to lead the team. But I think that's really important, and especially in a game that should be over by halftime.
Yeah. My next one is that I really think you got to come out and continue to run the ball. It's literally who we are, right? It's our culture. It's what we're made on. But do not be afraid to literally just sling the rock against this team. This is a team that has 3 sacks, 7 pass deflections, and 0 interceptions. I know FCS does tend to run the ball more, but I mean those are stats that you're definitely not proud of as far as the pass defense goes. So obviously Dylan, you give Dylan Earl a time. You give guys like Jamal Banks, Isaiah Nair, Jalen Lloyd, Thomas Fidone against just these smaller, slower. Nothing against them. I mean, but at the end of the day, they're going to be smaller. They're going to be slower. FCS guys. I feel like we can literally throw it all over them. As long as obviously you give them time, which I think we definitely can on Saturday. But yeah, definitely don't be afraid to throw it all over in the first half, even through the third quarter as well. Fourth quarter, probably shouldn't be a pass play in there. Probably should just run the clock out. But third quarter for sure.
Yeah. So my last one, this is as nitpicky as you can get, and I'm kind of just piggybacking off what Matt Rule has talked about. It's perimeter blocking. We saw a few plays, where wide receivers just missed their blocks. Travis Hunter blew up a big play, a screen to Jamal Banks because Nair missed his block on him. It's not a huge issue. We're still breaking off these big plays, but I think it's the difference. It's these little things that it's going to make the difference between being a good team and a great team. I think you have a Ja'Cory Barney out on the sideline. Jamal Banks holds his block. And this hasn't happened, but I'm saying like in the future, hypothetically, Ja'Cory Barney out on the sideline, Jamal Banks makes a perfect block on the safety. Ja'Cory Barney takes it for a touchdown or he can miss his block on the safety and it's a 6-yard gain. So it's just those little things that I think Matt Rule is really good about and the entire staff is really good about that can take you from a good team to a great team. And I think that's where Nebraska is trying to be. So perimeter blocking is my last one, but even then it's nitpicking, but that's my last key to the game. I just want to see that.
Yeah. My final key is kind of goes off of my first one, my first one, and that's the pass rush, right? And so the more and more you can get to the quarterback, the more you can make these guys play from behind the sticks, the more turnovers we're going to get, the more desperate they're going to get, and just the more fuel, right? And so like I said before, if this is, UNI is actually really, really good at keeping games like this close. They've done it with Iowa. They've done it with Iowa State. They've done it with pretty much everyone they've played. Now, they don't usually ever come out on top of those, but they do keep them close. And close games have kind of been our kryptonite in the last few years. I'm okay with having a close game against Illinois, against Rutgers, USC, Ohio State, teams like that, Iowa even, but Northern Iowa, no. And so you got to blow this one out of the water in the first half. And the way to do that is you start hot, like you said, and you get the pass rush going.
Yeah. No, definitely. Okay, so now we're getting to our score predictions. Vegas currently, as of Thursday night when we're recording this, has Nebraska as a 32.5 point favorite with an over/under of 47.5, meaning Vegas is projecting about a 40-7 win for Nebraska. Really, I'm gonna keep it short. Nebraska has every single advantage in this game. I don't think there's a single position on either team where, or I don't think there's a single position on UNI where they are better than Nebraska. So I think Nebraska really has, or Matt Rule has really built this culture to the point where they're going to come out hot. It's a night game. It's going to be a loud crowd, not quite as loud as last week. Obviously, it's the loudest we ever heard. But I think they dominate start to finish. And I think UNI gets out of their element. They want to start passing. Like Zach said, we're going to force them to pass. They're going to make some mistakes. We're going to force some turnovers. And I think Nebraska wins 42-6, covers the spread, but I think the over just barely hits. Actually, yeah, they do hit the spread. Yeah, they hit the spread, and then they hit that 48, which would be the over, just barely.
Yeah, for my score prediction, I think it looks a lot like the UTEP game, in the fact that at halftime it's over. We don't really score much come second half, a couple times here or there. I think this one ends up being 42-3. But at half, I think it's like 35-0.
Yeah.
And then we score once in the second half. I think Dylan Raiola kind of shows everyone that he's not just this check down passer that he may have seemed to be. He actually has a deep ball. When you give him time, he actually is one of the best passers in the conference out there. And so I think they let him sling it in the second quarter quite a bit. I think he might put on, 2 touchdown passes, maybe 3 if things get a little crazy. But most likely 2, over 200 yards, and kind of close the game out. 42-3.
So yeah, that'll do it for us. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, leave a like, hit the bell. Zach, you got anything else?
Not right now, no.
All right. Well, without further ado, go Big Red.